So in the last video we have seen the state variable visibility, public, internal, private, and we are about to see this function visibility. Let me switch to dark mode. So Solidity knows two kind of function calls, external ones and you can see the internal functions. So let's deep dive into this: external, public, internal, and private. So these are the four kinds of visibility that we will come across in our functions. So as you are seeing over here, the function that we have defined, it's public. So we can define it as private, but then we can't access it outside. Let me just showcase the same to you. Let's deploy it with hello. So now you are only seeing this state variable message. You are not seeing this update message orange button over here like the way you were seeing in the previous instances. So because we have made that function as private, and we can also made it as internal, so while it was private, we won't be able to access it in the derived contract or the inherited contract. But in case of internal, we can access it in the derived contract when we inherit this, but we still won't access it outside. So if I compile it again and deploy, then still I can't access that update message function. Let me just delete these instances to avoid confusion. So we will only be left with our previous one, which was public, and public over here as well. Yeah, so that's our initial contract instance, and we have covered private, public, and internal and external. So the external is basically the difference between external and public is that it can be accessed outside. The external can also be accessed outside. So when we see now by deploying another instance, then we can see update message, orange button, and the corresponding function outside as well. So what is the difference? So it's same as public, right? But still there is one difference. Let me just showcase the same to you. So let me just define another function call update message, and let me just reuse this same parameter over here and define it as public. So when I try to call this update message function inside this by passing this new message, when I try to compile it, then you can see showing this error. So let me just read it. Undeclared identifier update message is not or not yet visible at this point. Why? Because we are trying to call the external, like the function of type external visibility, having external visibility inside the contract. So that's why we are unable to call it. It's not visible at this point. So what if we define it as like anything else? We can define it as internal. It's okay. It's fine. We can define it as private. It will still work fine. We can define it as public because we are calling it within the contract. So internal and so the private will work fine because we are calling it inside the contract, and public will work in any case, whether inside the contract, outside the contract, or from the derived contract. So I think the difference between external and public is clear, and you can also read the same from here. External functions are part of the contract interface, so like it's talking the same thing in a slightly technical language, which means that they can be called from other contexts via transactions. An external function cannot be called internally. That's what we have just seen. That is, calling f does not work, but this dot f works. So that's also a difference, and also an example of using this keyword. So let me just showcase the same to you. So previously when we defined this as external, then we are seeing this error, right? Like it's not visible at this point, but we can still call it using this keyword. So now we are not calling it internally, we are calling it externally by using this instance. So this basically means the instance of the contact in which we are using this keyword. So this is basically creates the instance of the contract inside the contract. So like the way we see super dot and then function, like we will see, like we'll come to that later in inheritance. You will come across that like super dot function, which means that we are calling the particular function using the super keyword, which means the parent class. Like we are basically creating the instance of the parent class and then calling that function. And this means we are just calling using the instance of this particular contract in which we are currently at. So this dot update message will work despite the fact that this is the message, like the function that we are calling is external or public or internal or whatever. So whatever the visibility will be, we can still call it using this dot update message. But yeah, one thing that you can note over here, as we are trying to call it externally using this keyword. So once we define it as private, then we won't be able to call using this, because now I think this particular thing will be more clear to you. The one thing that we read here, yeah. When used within the same context, the external access. So using this dot x, we are basically externally accessing a particular thing, invokes the getter, while internal access, while calling it directly, gets the variable value directly from storage. So it can be variable and also it can be a function while calling a function. So you can also read about this keyword from search on web, this keyword in Solidity. And you will come across like this stack exchange. You can just go to that and then you can see it means this is the pointer to the current instance of the type. So that's also like a technical definition. So yeah, I think you already get the gist of it, but if you want to understand it technically, then like once you start practicing and start implementing things in this language in Solidity, then you will understand it in more depth. But as you can see over here, like when we defined the update message function as private and we tried to call it using this keyword in another function inside the same context, then we are not able to call. But if we define it as external, then we are able to call. But if I remove this, then I am not able to call it like this. But if I define it back as internal, then I am able to call it like this without this keyword. So there's the difference. So I think the visibility modifier for functions are also clear now. Function visibility that we were seeing over here. Internal private functions are like internal ones, but they are not visible in derived contexts. So we generally see like all these visibility modifiers in our smart contract development journey. So when you come across the contexts that are there deployed like on the DeFi or in the DeFi world, then you will come across all these types of functions. So there are various pros and cons of using like these functions, like in terms of gas usages and in terms of security. So there are various concerns and there are various practices to define like what function is of what type. So you will get to learn more about this once you get experience in writing smart contracts. So now the next thing that we will see is pure and view functions.